Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Imagine a quiet night in the world of magic. Hogwarts lies still, wrapped in moonlight, its ancient stones whispering secrets only the walls remember. Beyond the portraits and winding corridors, there lives a story rarely spoken. A tale of a student who never truly left. Of a spirit that returned, not to haunt, but to seek something long lost. Tonight, you'll hear a story of life after death. Of an ancient mirror that reflects more than the eye can see. A wise professor who understands the fragile boundary between worlds. And a young wizard, hungry for power, who stirs what should have stayed buried. Take a slow breath. Let your thoughts drift through the quiet halls of Hogwarts. That's where this story begins. Welcome to the soul beyond the mirror. A bedtime story from the wizarding world, meant to carry you gently into sleep. I awoke with a stillness in the air that felt unlike anything I'd ever known. There was no cold, no warmth, no breath in my chest. Just silence. The kind of silence that stretched beyond sound itself. For a long moment, I didn't move. I couldn't even tell if I could. The world around me was dimly lit, and I recognized at once the enchanted ceiling of the great hall. Stars twinkled faintly above me, mirroring the night sky outside, casting a soft silver glow across the long, empty tables. It was strange. The hall was never this quiet, not even at night. There were always whispers, footsteps, the occasional sound of Peeves giggling in a far-off corridor. But now, nothing. I slowly turned my head, and to my surprise, I moved effortlessly, as if I wasn't bound by joints or muscles anymore. The motion was smooth, weightless. I tried to stand. I didn't feel my feet touch the floor. Instead, I floated just a few inches above the stone tiles. My eyes widened. Or at least, they should have. But there was no heartbeat pounding in my chest, no cold sweat of realization. There was only the growing understanding something was very, very different. The house banners still hung in their usual places, rippling gently despite the absence of wind. The Ravenclaw eagle shimmered quietly on the far side of the hall, and for a moment, a vague warmth touched me. Ravenclaw, that was mine. Wasn't it? The image tugged at something within me, like an old friend calling from across a crowd. That was when I began to remember. A faint echo of laughter in a library, the scent of dusty parchment and fresh ink. A voice, mine, reciting spells with enthusiasm, then faltering with embarrassment when I got them wrong. The feel of a wand in my hand, warm and familiar. The face of someone sitting across from me, blurred now, but kind. All of it so familiar, yet fragmented, like a mirror cracked too many times to see yourself clearly. I drifted forward, across the long oak tables, gazing at each in turn. The candles above them floated in the same way they always had, casting their golden glow as though time hadn't passed at all. It was beautiful, and yet deeply unsettling. Then came the realization I was alone. No students, no teachers, no noise of silverware clinking or owls swooping overhead. Not even the soft echo of Filch muttering to himself in the hallway. The only movement was mine, and even that felt borrowed. I reached out to touch the nearest bench, curious. My hand passed right through it. There was no pain, no shock, just the further confirmation of the impossible. I wasn't alive. I turned slowly in the air, trying to piece everything together. My name was just beyond my grasp, teetering on the edge of memory. Something. Evans? No. Ethan? No, that didn't feel right. I pushed the thought away for now, drifting aimlessly through the air like a forgotten feather. Hogwarts itself felt the same. It always had a certain sentience to it, a presence. It welcomed and mourned in equal measure. As a student, I'd always believed the castle could feel us, respond to us. Now, I could feel it too, but differently. I wasn't part of the bustling energy anymore. I was an echo, and Hogwarts, well, it remembered me. I could sense it in the walls. In the way the portraits seemed to shift just slightly, their eyes lingering longer than necessary. They couldn't see me, but they felt me. As I passed under the raised staff table, I caught sight of something strange, my reflection. Not in a mirror, but in the polished silver goblet resting on the table. I leaned closer. The image looking back at me was faded, translucent. A pale version of who I once was. My hair, was it dark brown? Curly, perhaps. My eyes were a faint shadow of color. My robes, definitely Ravenclaw. The crest glimmered softly, though it looked like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. I stared at myself, searching for clues in my own expression. There was something sorrowful there. A weight. Regret, perhaps. I couldn't be sure. But there was no fear. That, at least, surprised me. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye near the main doors. Instinctively, I floated toward it, expecting, well, I wasn't sure what I expected. A teacher? Another ghost? Maybe nearly Headless Nick or the Bloody Baron. But the doors remained closed. What I'd seen wasn't real, just a trick of the candlelight, perhaps. Or my own wishful thinking. It was odd how much I wanted company, even now. I'd never been the most outgoing student, but the silence pressed against me like the cold. I missed the sound of pages turning, of quills scratching on parchment, the clatter of goblets during dinner, the laughter, even when it wasn't mine, the energy of life, so bright and full and fast. I could feel its absence in my very core, or whatever part of me now acted as one. I began to wonder, why here? Why now? Hogwarts had seen so much over the years. Wars, dark magic, legendary students, and terrible losses. Had I died in one of those moments? Was I just another casualty of the chaos that sometimes swept through these stone halls? And then a chilling thought occurred to me, was I the only one who remembered me? I drifted higher toward the enchanted ceiling, watching as a few soft clouds rolled across the starlit canvas. Above, the moon was a sliver, cradled in the curve of the stars like a lullaby waiting to be sung. I hovered there for what felt like hours, lost in the quiet hum of the castle's ancient magic. The thought of being forgotten twisted something inside me. Not from vanity, but from loneliness. What was the point of a life if no one remembered you'd lived it? Somewhere in the distance, I heard a faint chime, a bell? Or maybe a clock? 12 times it rang, echoing down empty corridors. Midnight. A new day. A new beginning? Or perhaps just another day of being trapped between. Still, as the sound faded, I noticed something. A pull. A gentle tug, like someone calling my name without speaking it aloud. It wasn't urgent, nor forceful. Just present. Steady. Familiar. Hogwarts was calling. And perhaps, I thought, it was time I found out why. I turned away from the ceiling and let myself float gently toward the hallway beyond the great hall. Whatever I was now, ghost, spirit, memory, I wasn't finished. Something remained undone. Something tied me here. And in the quiet of the ancient castle, I whispered to myself for the first time, I remember Hogwarts, but does it remember me? And so I drifted into the shadows of the corridor, searching for memory, for answers, for myself. It wasn't just the eerie weightlessness or the way my presence seemed to drift like fog, faint, unnoticed. It was the disconnection. I was here, yes, floating through the same corridors I had once rushed through, arms full of books, late for charms or transfiguration. But I was not part of it. Hogwarts breathed around me, alive with ancient magic, but I no longer belonged in its rhythm. I was a pause between heartbeats. I drifted past suits of armor that once made me laugh when Peeves enchanted them to sing in broken Latin. Past stone staircases that liked to shift mid-step, just when you thought you had them figured out. The portraits muttered as I passed, and though they couldn't see me, some of them paused, as if they felt me nearby. Perhaps ghosts gave off more than just cold. The tug I'd felt earlier, gentle, familiar, guided me now, even as I tried to make sense of the thoughts stirring in the depths of my fractured memory. I turned corners without thinking, my movement instinctual. My hand passed through a low-hanging tapestry near the library, one I hadn't remembered until now, and with it, a flicker lit in my mind. Books. I had always loved books. Not just for studying, but for the escape they offered. The quiet refuge they gave from the swirl of school life. When the common room got too loud, I would disappear into the library's hidden alcoves, sometimes staying until Madame Pants forced me out with a stern glare. As I approached the great double doors of the library, I paused. There was no reason to hesitate. I didn't need to push them open. I could simply float through. But old habits die hard, I suppose, even in death. I reached out, and my translucent hand passed through the wood. Still, I gave myself a breath before drifting in. The library hadn't changed. Towering shelves loomed overhead like guardians of forgotten knowledge, their spines lined in leather, dust, and time. The faint scent of old parchment and candle wax lingered in the air. Candles floated gently above the tables, flickering with soft golden light. Somewhere deep within, the hum of magic whispered through the silence. As I passed between the shelves, the memories came faster. The feel of my robes brushing against my ankles. The weight of a book in my hands. The silence, broken only by turning pages and the occasional cough. I saw flicker, me, sitting cross-legged on the floor, a thick book open in my lap. I couldn't hear what I was reading, but I looked peaceful. Safe. I followed the echo of that memory deeper into the library, toward the restricted section. A rope still hung across the entrance, enchanted to ward off curious students. I passed through easily. Beyond the barrier, the shelves grew narrower, the light dimmer. Here, the air felt heavier, thicker with age and secrets. My gaze drifted over the titles. Some were familiar. Others were written in languages I couldn't name. My hand hovered over one in particular, a large black tome with silver clasps that shimmered faintly. As my fingers passed through the spine, another vision struck me. I was here. Years ago. Alive. Sneaking in after hours, a candle in one hand, eyes wide with curiosity. A friend, yes, I had come with someone else. Their face eluded me, but their presence lingered like warmth at my side. We were searching for something. A spell? A story? No, not just curiosity. There had been purpose in our hunt. I felt the surge of that urgency ripple through me, and a sharp image came into focus. A name etched into my mind, the Mirror of Veritas. The mirror wasn't in the library, but the book we saw had mentioned it. Something about truth magic, about souls and reflections. It had been banned long ago. Not because it was dark, but because it was too honest. Too powerful. That's what we were chasing, answers. But to what? I pulled away from the vision, overwhelmed. My mind was starting to stir, like a puzzle slowly building itself piece by piece. I knew then I hadn't died from illness or accident. Something had gone wrong. Something we had done. I left the library, my thoughts churning with ghostly momentum, and found myself drifting through the castle without thought. My memories were leading me somewhere now. Somewhere deep. Somewhere I had once sworn never to return. The room of requirement. It appeared only when someone needed it, truly needed it. It took the shape of whatever the seeker desired most. That night, my final night, I had needed answers. And it had given them to me. Or tried to. As I floated up to the 7th floor corridor, past the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy attempting to teach trolls ballet, my essence grew heavier. Like gravity trying to reclaim what it had once lost. The wall stretched before me, blank stone. I paced, though floating, 3 times before it. Nothing happened. Was it because I no longer needed it? Or because I was no longer among the living? I focused, closed my eyes, tried to feel what I had felt that night. Confusion, fear, desperation, and beneath it all, guilt. Something shifted in the air. A faint shimmer. And then, as if pulled from mist, a door appeared. Old, iron-handled, and familiar. I didn't hesitate. Inside, the room was dark. Not the absence of light kind of dark, but the heavy, oppressive sort that pressed against the mind. The room had remembered what I had once asked it to be. There were broken mirrors leaning against the far wall. Books scattered across the floor, many of them torn. And in the center, a circular platform made of stone, runes carved deeply into its edge. As I hovered toward it, a name rose from the depths of memory, the binding circle. I hadn't come here alone that night. There was another. A friend, no, more than that. Someone I had trusted completely. We had found something in the old texts, a theory that souls could be linked, that knowledge could be passed through reflections if only the proper mirror and spell were used. We weren't trying to become powerful. We were trying to know, to see. We wanted the truth, perhaps too much. And it had cost me everything. There was a surge, a flash, and then nothing. That was how I died. The memory struck me like a tide breaking against the shore. I staggered in the air, though I had no legs to carry me. I clutched at the sensation of falling, reliving the moment I had realized something had gone horribly wrong. A broken rune. A spell miscast. A betrayal? No. I didn't want to believe that. But the truth lingered, just out of reach. I left the room, drifting once more into the cold, stone corridors of Hogwarts, my thoughts louder than ever. I now knew two things. One, I had died because of something I did. Maybe something I believed in too much. Two, someone had been with me that night. Someone who might still be here. Alive. And maybe, just maybe, they remembered me. The castle shifted around me, groaning with its age. A gust of wind curled through an open window, fluttering a curtain like a ghost in flight. As I moved deeper into the sleeping halls, I whispered my name aloud, trying to hear it in the echo. Nothing came. But in the silence, something stirred, an answer, perhaps. A presence. A memory. And I followed. I had heard his footsteps before I saw him. A slow, measured sound, neither hurried nor hesitant. The kind of step that belonged to someone who always knew where they were going, and why. It echoed softly down the corridor ahead, accompanied by the gentle rustle of fabric, robes, perhaps. I didn't know how I recognized it, but something inside me stirred. And then, like mist parting from moonlight, he appeared. Albus Dumbledore. He looked exactly as I remembered, if memory could be trusted. Tall, graceful in his age, his silver beard sweeping low on his chest. His eyes, those brilliant blue eyes, sparkled even in the darkened corridor. But it wasn't the sparkle of humor I had seen in them before. No, this was something older. Deeper. As if he were staring at something only he could see. Then he stopped walking and looked directly at me. "Ah," he said, voice calm, as if greeting an old friend who'd simply arrived a bit late. "I was wondering when you'd find your way back to the 7th floor." I froze, if a ghost could be said to freeze. It wasn't fear. It was the shock of being seen. "You can see me?" A small smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Yes, I can. Not always, not everywhere. But here, in this corridor, the veil is a little thinner. Especially on nights like this." His voice was just as I remembered it. Warm, but threaded with a kind of careful distance. He always made you feel like your words mattered, even if he already knew what you were going to say. I hovered a little closer, uncertain. "How?" I thought no one could. He turned then, slowly, and gestured for me to follow. "Walk with me." So I did, or floated, rather, keeping pace beside him as he moved down the corridor, robes trailing behind him like shadows in candlelight. For most of the living, he began, the spiritual plane is distant. Not inaccessible, but veiled. Hogwarts, however, is different. It has always been a place where the boundaries between life and death are thinner. Some say it's the magic. Others believe it's the memories. I listened, unsure if I was meant to speak or simply absorb. "You've been wandering the castle for some time," he said gently. "Do you know why you haven't moved on?" I hesitated. Not entirely. I remember pieces. Something happened. I was in the room of requirement. There was a mirror. A spell. "Ah, the Mirror of Veritas," he said, nodding. "A curious artifact. Very few know it ever existed, and even fewer know what it does." "You saw truth, didn't you?" I nodded, my form dimming for a moment as if reacting to the emotion swelling inside me. I think I wanted to understand something. Maybe about myself. Maybe about magic. It's all still fuzzy. Dumbledore's eyes softened. The mirror doesn't lie, but it also doesn't protect. It shows truth in its rawest form. That can be dangerous. Sometimes fatal. We turned a corner and entered one of the lesser-used towers. The torches along the walls flickered low, casting warm, flickering light on the stone. "You are not the first to have sought answers beyond the veil," he continued. "But most do so out of desperation or grief. You, however, had something else. Curiosity, yes, but also purpose." I drifted alongside him, letting the silence stretch before breaking it. "Why am I still here, Professor?" He stopped walking and looked at me with a gaze that seemed to reach through my very essence. "Because something in your soul has not yet resolved," he said. "You are bound by unfinished intent. Not just by what happened to you, but by the way it happened. There is guilt, yes, but also confusion. Doubt. The mind might forget, but the soul does not." I looked away, toward the tall windows where the moonlight poured in, casting soft pools of silver on the floor. "There was someone else," I said quietly. "The night I died. I still can't remember who." "Perhaps you're not ready to," he said. "Memory is not a door you can force open. But the truth always leaves traces. And Hogwarts has a way of helping those who are willing to look." I turned back to him. "Do you know who it was?" He gave the faintest shake of his head. "I know many things. But this is your journey. And part of that journey is finding the courage to look without fear of what you might see." There was a long pause between us. "I don't want to haunt this place forever." "No one truly does," he said gently. "Even the most bitter of spirits began with a longing to stay connected to something they once loved. But you, my dear boy, are different from most. You do not seek vengeance or attention. You seek meaning. And that, I believe, is why you were permitted to return." I hadn't thought of it like that. I had assumed I was trapped, punished, even. But maybe I had been given a chance. A rare, quiet chance to understand before the end. "I don't even know my own name," I whispered, more to myself than to him. But Dumbledore heard. "You will," he said. "Memory and identity are tied closely together. Each step you take brings a little more light to the darkness. Even now, your form is growing clearer." I looked down, and it was true. Where once I had been nearly transparent, now there was more shape to me. My robes were easier to define. The crest on my chest more visible, Ravenclaw, blue and silver, proud as ever. There are those still living who were touched by your story, Dumbledore said. Some remember you in ways you might not expect. Some might even fear the return of your name. I turned toward him, my mind sparking. You mean someone doesn't want me to remember? Dumbledore's expression grew unreadable. Magic, like memory, is complicated. It intertwines with emotion, with will. Intent matters. And not all who remember the past wish for it to return. We stood in silence for a while, the only sound being the distant song of the wind outside the windows. I don't want to be angry, I said softly. Even if someone did betray me, I just want to understand. He smiled then, a small, proud smile. And that, my boy, is why I believe you will. As he turned to go, his footsteps echoing once again down the long corridor, I felt something shift within me. Not pain, not fear, but clarity. A step forward. The path was still veiled in shadows, but I could see the outline of it now. Before he disappeared around the corner, Dumbledore paused. There is one among the living who has taken interest in your return, he said without turning. Be careful whom you trust. Power and memory are a dangerous mix. Then he was gone, and I was alone again, but not lost. The castle felt different now. Not just a monument of stone in history, but a map waiting to be read. A story waiting to be told. I drifted down the corridor in the opposite direction, no longer aimless. Something inside me had settled. Not completed, not whole, but focused. Someone remembered me. And someone feared me. And soon, I would remember why. I've always believed that places remember. Walls absorb whispers, floors echo footsteps that no longer walk them. Even magic has memory, and Hogwarts, more than anywhere else in the world, carries those memories like a second soul. That's why I wasn't surprised when I found myself near the astronomy tower again. It had always been quiet here. A place of late-night thoughts and unspoken truths. Of solitude. Even in life, I had liked this tower. Maybe because the sky felt closer. Now, I hovered there, watching the stars like I once did with parchment on my lap, charting constellations with a sleepy quill. But this time, I wasn't alone. A tall figure stood at the edge of the platform, hands tucked behind his back, silver blonde hair catching the moonlight like frost. He didn't make a sound, but I knew immediately who it was. Draco Malfoy. He didn't belong to this place like Dumbledore did. His presence didn't move into the stone. It pressed against it. Sharp, deliberate. I watched him for a while, expecting him to leave. He didn't. I know you're here, he said softly, not turning around. Something in me tightened. I've felt you for days, he continued. Not just the usual cold in the air or the flicker of candlelight. You. I stayed still, floating in the shadows near the archway. You don't have to hide, he said, a faint smirk in his voice. You've already done the hard part, coming back. He turned then, slowly, his pale eyes scanning the space. They didn't land on me exactly, but they came close. And his expression changed, just slightly. Curiosity, not fear. Anticipation. I thought it might be you, he said. It was only a matter of time. I drifted closer, not out of trust, but necessity. He was speaking as if we shared some hidden understanding, but I didn't remember him. Not really. You knew me, I said quietly. He blinked. Just once. Yes. From before I died. He gave a low chuckle, more of an exhale. You could say that. We were never friends. Not like that. But I knew who you were. The wind stirred around us, tugging gently at his robes. He stepped closer to the stone railing, leaning his hands on the edge. Ravenclaw, if I remember. Clever. Quiet. You always kept to yourself. But you were the kind that watched everything. The kind that sees more than they let on. He paused, then added, dangerous, in your own way. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. He went on. There was talk after you vanished. Some thought you ran away. Others thought it was an accident. But the truth? It was buried. Like most inconvenient truths. His voice turned thoughtful, like someone choosing his words with care. You were working on something, he said. Something the professors didn't approve of. Something about soul magic. Am I right? I remained still, watching him through the haze of half-memory and instinct. I know more than you think, he said. I've been watching. Listening. I have access now to archives, artifacts. The kind of things I wasn't allowed near as a student. He turned to me again. This time, he wasn't smiling. There are doors, he said. Things hidden in Hogwarts that only respond to the right energy. Certain enchantments. Triggers that can only be activated by someone like you. There it was. The reason. You want to use me. His eyes gleamed. I want to understand you. Your return, it means something. Ghosts don't just appear. Not like this. And the fact that you're gaining form again, that your voice carries through, that matters. He took a step closer. I could feel the shift in the air. Not cold, like with most living people, but charged. Tense. You think I'm here to help you, I said carefully. To open something. Or find something. No, he said. I think you're here because something unfinished remains. And that kind of magic, it's rare. Powerful. His voice softened, almost sincere. I don't intend to harm you. But you should know the truth. People are already whispering. Peeves has been babbling nonsense about a Ravenclaw ghost who doesn't behave like the others. The portraits are stirring. And the headmistress suspects. Professor McGonagall? He nodded. She's sharp. Always has been. But even she doesn't know everything hidden in this castle. Dumbledore did. Snape knew some. But others kept it buried. He looked out over the forest, its shadow stretching beyond the reach of torchlight. I've spent the last few years trying to build something, he said. Not just power. Legacy. Understanding. I want to know the truths that even Voldemort didn't touch. The truths you stumbled across before. Before I died, I finished. Yes. There was a moment of silence between us. Not tense. Just suspended. Why? I asked. Why does it matter to you? He was quiet for a moment before answering. Because I've seen what happens when you let other people write your story. I lived under my father's name, then Voldemort's shadow, then the guilt of everything I didn't stop. I want something of my own. His voice was calm, but there was steel under it. You were onto something big, he said. Something buried in this castle. I can help you find it. But I need you to trust me. I don't remember everything, I said honestly. You will, he replied. And when you do, I'll be waiting. He turned to leave, footsteps soft against the stone. But just before he vanished into the shadows of the tower stairwell, he paused. One more thing, he said without turning. The person who was with you that night. The one who helped you with the mirror. I floated a little closer. They're still alive, he said. And they've been pretending they don't know what happened. But they do. Who are they? I asked, the chill in my voice unintentional. He gave a faint smile. Now that, he said, you'll have to remember on your own. And with that, he was gone. I remained at the top of the tower long after he left, watching the stars move through their slow, patient arc. My form wavered in the breeze, but something had settled inside me. Not peace. Not yet. But purpose. Draco Malfoy wanted to use me, yes. He might not have lied, but his truth came with strings. Still, there was something else. Something deeper beneath his calm words. Fear. Not of me. Of what I might remember. The castle had a rhythm, a quiet pulse beneath its old stone skin. Even now, so many years after I had last lived within its walls, I could feel it. The thrum of magic in the air, the hush of unseen footsteps down empty corridors, the faint warmth where ancient spells still lingered like breath on glass. Hogwarts never slept. Not truly. It remembered. And slowly, so slowly, I was beginning to remember too. The night after my encounter with Draco Malfoy, I drifted through the castle without purpose, or so it seemed. But deep within, something was pulling me. A thread buried in the fog of my mind, tugging me through stairwells and past portraits, across forgotten walkways and behind moving tapestries, until I found myself standing once again outside the room of requirement. The 7th floor corridor was quiet. The torches flickered gently, casting long shadows that swayed with the breath of the castle. I stared at the bare stretch of wall that had once become a door for me, the door I now only half remembered. My essence quivered with a tension I couldn't name. And then, as if summoned by that silent memory, the door appeared. It rippled into being, one dark grain of wood at a time. A brass handle. Iron hinges. No sound, only stillness. I floated closer, hesitation stirring in the hollow space where my heart once beat. The room beyond remembered me. It opened not just as I had needed it, but as I had once feared it would remain unchanged. Inside, it was quiet. Cold. Empty, save for a single object at the far end, draped in a cloth so black it seemed to swallow the light. The mirror. Even covered, it pulsed with a kind of presence. Familiar. Heavy. As I drew near, the air around it grew heavier, like the very magic of the room was holding its breath. I reached for the cloth, not with a hand, but with will. And slowly, it lifted. Beneath the dark veil was the same tall, thin-framed mirror. The same tarnished silver edges, carved with runes I hadn't understood then and still could not name now. But the surface was dark, still, like ink waiting to be disturbed. And then, a flicker, like candlelight in water. I saw myself, but not as I was now. Not the ghost, the boy I used to be. Young, sharp-eyed, with that Ravenclaw badge gleaming on my robes. I stood there in the reflection, whole and alive. But I wasn't alone. Another figure appeared beside me in the glass, slowly resolving from mist into something more solid. A girl. Slender. Her robes marked her as a Hufflepuff. She had dark, shoulder-length hair and eyes that burned with something like fear or determination. And then, the memory slammed into me. Her name was Elara. Elara Finch. A 7th year, like me. A fellow seeker of forgotten truths. She had been the one who told me about the mirror. The one who whispered secrets in the library, long after curfew. The one who said, "I think I've found something even Dumbledore wouldn't talk about." Elara. We had stood here, side by side, the night it all happened. She had the incantation scribbled in her shaky handwriting. I had the focus, the blood quill, the chalk for the circle. It hadn't been dark magic. Not exactly. But it had been deep. Older than anything we should have touched. The spell was supposed to reveal the soul's truest form. To show us what we really were beneath the masks. We had told ourselves it was for understanding. For knowledge. But I remembered now. The truth came too fast. Too sharp. The mirror didn't just show us what we were, it ripped away everything else. I had screamed. Not in pain, but in loss. I saw something in that glass I still couldn't name. Something that hollowed me out. Something that pulled. Elara had shouted my name. I saw her in the reflection, trying to stop the spell, clawing at the edges of the circle as light poured from the mirror like fireflies soaked in shadow. And then, nothing. The memory stopped there. Like a story with its last page torn away. I backed away from the mirror, the edges of my form flickering. My mind spun. Elara had been there. She had cast the spell with me. She had tried to stop it. So why hadn't she told anyone? Why had she let them forget me? A noise at the door pulled me from the spiral of thought. It creaked open, no ceremony, no warning. And in stepped someone I hadn't expected to see again so soon. Draco Malfoy. He didn't look surprised to find me there. In fact, he smiled slightly, like he'd been waiting. "You remembered," he said. I said nothing. My presence pulsed, colder than before. "You remember Elara now, don't you?" he continued, walking slowly toward the mirror, his eyes locked on it with a kind of reverent fear. "You remember what you were doing?" "She was with me," I said. "She saw what happened." "Yes." "And she told no one." "Because she was afraid of what people would think. Afraid of what they do." He turned toward me, his face unreadable. Elara came from a family that couldn't afford scandal. Her father was being watched by the ministry. One more misstep, and they'd lose everything. So she let the story disappear. He paused. She let you disappear. My form grew sharp at the edges. How do you know all this? Because, he said calmly, she came to me after you vanished. Said the mirror was too dangerous. Said we needed to hide it. But by then, I was already curious. I knew you weren't just some lost Ravenclaw with too many books and not enough sleep. I knew you had found something real. He looked into the mirror, his eyes distant. And now you're back. I drifted toward him, voice low. You plan to use this. Use me. I plan, he said carefully, to finish what you started. The air around us shifted again. The room didn't like that. The mirror shimmered faintly, as if responding to his words with unease. She's still at the ministry, he added. Elara works in the Department of Mysteries. The irony, isn't it? The girl who tried to forget the truth is now surrounded by it every day. I stared at the glass. At myself. At her reflection beside mine. A new memory stirred, fragile and whispering, Elara's voice the moment before everything went dark. Just one word. Run. Draco stepped away from the mirror. You should go see her, he said. If you want the whole truth. If you want to remember why the spell went wrong. Why the mirror chose you. I don't need you to tell me what I need, I said, colder than before. He smirked, unfazed. No. But you do need someone who knows where the rest of the pieces are. He left without another word. And I stayed, hovering before the mirror, watching the reflection of a boy who no longer breathed. I was remembering now. And the truth wasn't done with me yet. The Ministry of Magic had changed since I was last near it, though, truthfully, I had never walked its halls in life. Now, as something less than living, I drifted through its winding corridors with a hush to my presence, unnoticed by most. My essence threaded between the lamps and paper stacks, through whispers and muttered spells, toward the place where secrets sleep, the Department of Mysteries. Even now, the atmosphere of this place felt different than the rest of the world. Heavier. Time itself seemed to slow here, like every second passed beneath a watchful eye. Magic didn't hum, it listened. And everything you didn't say still seemed to echo. It took effort to remain tethered here. The further I drifted from Hogwarts, the less stable I felt. Hogwarts had a memory of me, a part of me woven into its very soul. Here, I was just a shadow between shadows. But I had come for Elara. I found her in a dim hallway with walls of dark stone and soft glowing lanterns. She stood outside a sealed chamber, murmuring to a runed lock that pulsed with silent warts. Her hair was tied back now, shorter than I remembered, and streaked with gray. But I knew it was her. I knew before she turned. Elara. Her shoulders froze. The name echoed strangely in the space, as if time bent around it. She didn't move, didn't turn, but her fingers dropped from the lock. Elara, I repeated, softer. This time, she spoke. You shouldn't be here. Her voice wasn't filled with fear, just exhaustion. As if she'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it all the same. I don't belong here, I said. Not anymore. But neither do you, not really. Finally, she turned. She looked older than I'd remembered her. Not just by years, but by the kind of weight that comes from carrying a secret so long it changes your bones. Her eyes locked onto mine, or rather, the air where my form flickered, and she exhaled like she was releasing something heavy. "It's really you," she whispered. "I thought that I wouldn't come back," I said gently. No, her voice trembled. "I thought you'd hate me." There it was. The truth under the silence. I moved closer. My form shimmered faintly with the effort. I could feel the strain of being so far from Hogwarts, the pull of the magic that once defined me growing thinner. But I stayed. I didn't understand what happened, I told her. Not until recently. Not until I found the mirror again. Elara flinched. "It should have never been used," she said quickly. "We didn't know what we were doing. The spell, it was incomplete. Unstable. We were just students. It was curiosity, madness. It was you who brought it to me," I said. There was no accusation in my voice. Only memory. Her eyes filled with something fragile. Regret. She stepped back until her shoulders touched the cold wall. "I didn't think it would work," she said. "I thought it was just legend. Like the veil in the death chamber. Like the time room. I thought we'd see something symbolic. I never imagined it would take you." "You tried to stop it," I said. "I remember now." Elara nodded, tears threatening. "And afterward?" I asked, softly. "Why did you say nothing?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I was afraid. Because I didn't know how to explain what we had done. And because I knew they'd blame you." Ravenclaw student. Brilliant, reclusive, always reading about things no one else dared to. They would have said you meddled with powers beyond your understanding. Maybe you did. But I was right there with you. She looked up again. "And I let you be forgotten." The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was thick with memory. Not just mine now, but hers. We stood together, one ghost, one breathing, and the weight of what we'd lost filled the space between us. "I've been back," I said after a while. "In the castle. Something brought me back." She nodded, slowly. "The mirror." "Yes. And something else. Something unfinished." She pressed her back harder against the wall, as if grounding herself. "There's more," she said. "I never told anyone, not even the unspeakables I work with now. I think the spell didn't just open your soul to the mirror. I think it pulled something out. Something that wasn't meant to be seen." Her eyes flicked around the hallway, as though expecting the walls to eavesdrop. "I stayed in Hogwarts for a month after you vanished," she said. "I wanted to find you. I wanted to undo it. But the room never showed me the mirror again. It wouldn't open to me. And after that, strange things started happening." "What kind of things?" "Voices in the hallways that no one else could hear. Dreams, shared dreams, with other students. One boy saw you walking near the library, even though your name had already been removed from the rolls. Magic misfiring. Words bending." I felt a shiver pass through the very air. "Elara," I said carefully. Draco Malfoy has found the mirror. He knows you were there. He said you came to him after I disappeared." She closed her eyes. I was desperate. I thought he could help me hide it. Help me lock it away where no one would find it again. I didn't know he'd spend the next 10 years trying to unlock it. Her voice grew colder. He doesn't care about the consequences. He just wants to know how it works. And he'll keep using you, your return, your memories, until he gets what he wants. "Then help me stop him," I said. She looked startled. "How?" "You knew the spell. You knew the mirror's origin. You brought it to me once. You must know where it came from, who created it." She hesitated. "Not exactly. But I know someone who does. Or did." "Who?" "Professor Vector," she said quietly. "She helped us once, unofficially. She warned us about dabbling in soulbound enchantments. But I didn't listen." "Is she still alive?" "Yes," Alara said. "Retired, but living not far from Hogsmeade. Quiet life, off the grid. But if anyone knows the truth of the mirror, it's her." I nodded, "Or the closest thing to it." "Then I need to see her." Alara hesitated again. "If you go back into the mirror's memories, you might not come back." "Not this time." "I didn't come back to fade," I said. "I came back for truth." She studied me, something old and sad swimming in her eyes. "I'll help you," she said. "Whatever it takes." Then she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small silver coin, no larger than a sickle. Runes danced across its surface like liquid fire. "Take this," she said. "It'll anchor you, at least for a while. It's a token from the Hall of Lost Names, designed to tether thoughts across space. Maybe it'll help your form stay whole." I reached out, not with hands, but with focus. And the coin hovered into my essence like a weightless promise. We stood in silence for a moment longer. "Thank you, Alara," I whispered. She nodded, her voice barely a breath. "I owe you everything." And then I turned. The world around me dimmed as I began the long, slow drift back toward Hogwarts. Toward the one person who might finally tell me why my soul had never rested. Toward the truth. The wind was soft in the hills north of Hogsmeade. It tugged at the wild grass and stirred the ivy on old stone cottages where chimney smoke curled lazily into a sky washed with evening gold. I drifted above the hedgerows and along narrow footpaths, the world growing quieter the further I moved from the bustle of the wizarding village. Out here, everything felt older, more patient, as if time itself had decided to rest. Alara had told me the location clearly, and even in my half-remembered state, I recognized the landscape, somewhere near where third years passed on their way to care of magical creatures. The cottage stood at the edge of a small orchard, surrounded by flowering vines and the protective hum of enchantments. I paused at the invisible boundary, the coin Alara had given me nestled deep in my essence. I could feel it thrumming faintly, steady and grounding. Without it, I might have unraveled before I even reached this place. The wards around the cottage shimmered slightly as I pressed forward. Not designed to keep out intruders, at least not forcefully, but to veil the place, to make it forgettable. Protective magic, subtle and thoughtful. I passed through like mist between threads of silk. Inside the garden, the cottage came into view properly, weathered stone, a moss-covered roof, and a crooked chimney from which warm light flickered behind lace-curtained windows. The air smelled of parchment, rain, and something faintly floral. I drifted closer to the front door, uncertain how to announce myself to someone who likely hadn't seen a ghost in decades, let alone me. But she must have sensed it. The door creaked open before I reached it. "Come in, if you still can," said a voice from inside. Calm. Familiar. I floated through the doorway. Professor Vector hadn't changed as much as I expected. Her hair was now streaked with white, tied back in a no-nonsense braid. Her sharp eyes remained the same, intense, curious, always watching more than she let on. She wore simple robes, a dark green shawl around her shoulders, and she moved with the grace of someone who still thought in equations and spell matrices. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said, turning away and walking deeper into the cozy sitting room. "You expected me?" My voice was quieter than it had ever been in life, but the words still hung in the air like breath on cold glass. Vector waved a hand toward the hearth. A log cracked in the flames, sending a warm glow dancing across the walls lined with books and scrolls. "Elara wrote to me," she said, settling into an armchair. "Not recently, years ago, right after you vanished. She didn't say your name, of course. Just that there had been a mistake. That something had been awakened." She looked at me now, properly. Not with fear or pity, but with something far more piercing, understanding. "I knew it had to do with the mirror," she continued. "She came to me the year before your disappearance, asking about forbidden spell work tied to the soul. I warned her, and through her questions, I realized the two of you had found something more than just theory." I floated closer to the edge of the rug, hovering just above the floor. "What is the mirror?" I asked. "Not the surface enchantments. The truth." She leaned forward, folding her hands. "It's called the Mirror of Eps.11, an artifact not made at Hogwarts, but brought here centuries ago, long before Dumbledore's time. It was designed by a circle of arithmeters and seers who believed the soul was a pattern that could be measured, calculated like a sequence of runes." She paused, her voice lowering. They were half right. The room dimmed slightly, or maybe it only felt that way. They created the mirror to reflect the true self, not the desire, like the mirror of Eps, but the fundamental essence of a person. Their soul structure. Their magical identity. Their destiny, in some sense. But why would that be dangerous? I asked. We weren't trying to summon anything. We just wanted to see who we were. That's the danger, Vector said softly. When a mirror shows you who you truly are, when it shows all of you, it risks unbinding the soul from the body. Because in that moment, when faced with pure truth, the mind can falter. The spell you used didn't just reveal your soul, it cast it into the reflection. You became part of the mirror's memory. I thought of the night I had died. How I had seen myself, not as I had hoped to be, but as something deeper. How the world had bent and cracked, and how Elara had screamed for me. You said it was called the Mirror of Eps.11, I said. What does that mean? Vector's eyes gleamed. It's an old word. Eps.11 refers to the end of things. The final truth. It implies a boundary between life and death, dream and waking, self and illusion. The mirror isn't just a tool. It's a threshold. I felt the cold ripple through my form. Why me? I asked. Why did it pull me in? Vector tilted her head. Because your soul wasn't settled. You were seeking something more than just understanding. You were open. Not just intellectually, but magically. Spiritually. That night, you didn't just look into the mirror. You offered yourself to it. I was silent. The flickering fire crackled behind us. Can it be undone? I asked, finally. Can I be freed from it? She took a long breath. Maybe. If you go back through it. If you face what it showed you fully. You'll need the spell completed, not just cast, but sealed with the truth you were too afraid to accept. I remembered Draco's voice, sharp with intent. I plan to finish what you started. He wants to use me, I said. To finish the spell and claim its power. Vector's face tightened. Then you must get there first. Before he forces the mirror to open again. I nodded. Will you help? She rose, slowly but steadily. From a drawer near the hearth, she pulled out a worn journal. These are the original notes from the arithmeters who made the mirror. I kept them hidden all these years, even after the ministry banned their research. Elara never saw them. But I think you'll need what's inside. She held it out, and though I could not touch it, the pages fluttered open to a sigil I recognized from that night. The circle we had drawn. The runes we had mispronounced. Only now, I saw the piece we had missed. The final symbol. The one Elara never finished carving. This is the seal, I said. The one we didn't complete. Vector nodded. It's the sigil of reconciliation. To bind what was revealed, to accept the full pattern of the soul. Without it, the mirror remains open. The spell, incomplete. I felt a spark of something stir inside me. Not quite hope, but momentum. I'll go back, I said. To the room of requirement. To the mirror. And Elara? Vector asked. She's with me now, I said quietly. She remembers. And she wants to set things right. Vector smiled faintly, as though relieved. Then go. Quickly. Before Malfoy pushes too far. The cottage faded behind me as I turned and vanished into the night air. The coin pulsed steadily. The wind rushed past. The castle was calling again, and the mirror waited. It was time to finish what had begun. The wind had picked up by the time I returned to Hogwarts. Clouds moved across the sky in long, sweeping gestures, trailing moonlight like paintbrushes across the lawn. The castle shimmered in the distance, a great, dreaming creature at rest. I passed through its outer walls gently, as one might slip into memory. The air inside still hung with familiarity, every corridor echoing with the quiet footfalls of students long gone and those still discovering themselves. But tonight, I wasn't here for nostalgia. The room of requirement was waiting. I drifted through the castle silently. The halls were empty, the portraits half asleep in their frames. A few ghosts passed me, nearly headless Nick offered a polite nod, and the Grey Lady, as always, pretended not to see me. I didn't mind. I had been like them once, floating, waiting, but now I was moving forward. I reached the corridor on the 7th floor and stopped across from the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. The stone wall opposite it was still, waiting. I thought of the mirror, of that night, of the circle drawn with chalk and trembling hands, of Alara's voice reciting runes we barely understood. I thought of how the world had gone quiet, how I had been pulled into silence. And I let the need rise. I need to see the mirror again. I paced 3 times before the wall, each step deliberate, focused. On the 3rd pass, the stone shifted. The door appeared, smooth and dark, with no handle, only a faint outline where one might press a palm. I passed through it like breath. The room had returned to the shape it held the night I vanished. Circular, dimly lit by floating orbs of pale blue light. Runes shimmered faintly on the floor, remnants of the unfinished spell. And at the center of it all stood the mirror. Tall, silent, patient. The mirror of Eps.11. Its surface was quiet now, silver like a still pond, reflecting only the soft light around it. But I could feel it humming, waiting for me, recognizing me. I hovered before it, and slowly the ripples began. My reflection shimmered into view, not the one I remembered from childhood or school photos. Not the boy I once was, but the soul of me, my true form, unsettled, incomplete, flickering like starlight beneath water. For the first time, I saw it clearly. The mirror didn't lie. Alara was right, I whispered. We didn't finish the spell. We never sealed it. Behind me, I felt a sudden shift in the air. Like static. Like tension wound too tightly. And then, his voice. You're just in time. Draco Malfoy stepped into the circle like he had always belonged there. He was older now, no longer the sharp-faced boy who strutted through Hogwarts in arrogance, but a man carrying hunger in his eyes. Hunger not for gold or recognition, but something far deeper. Control. I wasn't sure you'd make it back here, he said calmly, drawing his wand. But I'm glad. We need you. You mean you need me to open the mirror, I said. To finish the spell. He smiled thinly. Yes. You were always the key, weren't you? The one who offered himself completely. You crossed the threshold. You became the spell. I didn't move. You don't understand what this mirror does. What it takes. I understand enough, he said. It holds the imprint of soul-bound magic. The kind the ministry buried. The kind even the unspeakables fear. And now, with your help, I can unlock it. I looked at him closely. You think it'll give you power? I know it will, he said. I've studied your patterns. I've read Alara's notes. There's knowledge in their raw, unfiltered magic. All it needs is a soul to complete the seal. And what happens to that soul? I asked softly. He didn't answer. But he didn't need to. He meant to sacrifice me. Or whatever was left of me. I stepped forward, closer to the mirror. I could feel it responding. Runes along the floor sparked faintly, reacting to my presence. The ritual circle was waking. "Don't do anything foolish," Draco said behind me. "I can still make this work cleanly. All I need is for you to look. Just one look, and the mirror will open." I turned, just enough to meet his gaze. "I'm not here to open it," I said. "I'm here to close it." A beat of silence, and then he raised his wand. But he was too slow. A voice rang out behind him, strong and sure, "Expelliarmus." Draco's wand flew from his hand, clattering across the stone. Elara stepped into the room, her own wand leveled. Her face was tight with focus, but her eyes found mine, steady. "I told you I'd help," she said. Draco spun toward her, furious. You betrayed me?" "I told you I regretted what happened," she snapped. "That mirror took more than you understand. I won't let it take anything else." He lunged for his wand, but Elara was faster. Petrificus totalis. He froze mid-step, falling stiffly to the floor with a dull thud. The room was quiet again. Elara exhaled and turned to me. "Are you ready?" I faced the mirror. The surface had changed again. My reflection remained, but behind it now shimmered the shadow of the room as it had been all those years ago, the night I was lost. I saw myself and Elara as we once were, hands trembling, hearts racing. "I'm ready," I said. She stepped beside me, opening the journal Professor Vector had given us. Her voice softened. "I found the last rune. The seal." "Speak it," I said. She raised her wand, pointed it at the center of the mirror, and began to chant. The runes on the floor flared to life, glowing in intricate patterns. The mirror pulsed. I focused everything I had, every thread of memory, of identity, of will, and stepped into the reflection. There was no pain, only light, and sound, deep and melodic, like music made of thought. Inside, I saw it all again. The incomplete lines, the torn fabric of my soul, the edges that had frayed the night I crossed. But now, the final rune blazed before me, whole, beautiful. The seal of acceptance. Not escape. Not denial. Understanding. I reached for it, not with hands, but with something deeper. I let it into me, and for the first time, I felt whole. The mirror flashed. Outside, Elara saw the surface still. The light faded, and I was gone. Not scattered, not broken. Gone, the way souls are meant to go when their story ends. Elara stood alone in the silence. The mirror now showed only its silver face. No reflection, no shimmer. The runes on the floor dulled and cooled. She stepped forward, touched the glass. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but there was peace in her voice. She turned to Draco's frozen form. Her wand moved. Finite incantatum. He slumped to the floor, gasping. Elara met his furious gaze and said, quietly, "It's over." Outside, dawn was rising. The sun crept over the hills and bathed the castle in golden light. The mirror remained, but it no longer pulled, no longer echoed. It was just a relic now, a memory encased in silver. And far away, wherever souls go when they are no longer bound, I drifted free. not lost, not haunted. Home. And so, the mirror stands silent once more. The soul that lingered has found its way home, and the castle breathes again in peace, wrapped in the hush of dawn. Some stories are loud, with sparks and spells and shouting, but others, like this one, are quiet, gentle, waiting to be remembered only in dreams. If you listen closely, you might still hear a whisper in the corridors, a soft echo of a life unfinished, now complete. Rest now. Let the magic settle, and drift, as all souls do, into the stillness beyond the story. Good night, and sleep well.